Okay. The last two things we need to cover are special cases. Okay? We're going over difference of squares. So we've been factoring. We've learned the normal standard form. That standard form usually looks like this. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, these are a, b, and c. This is our normal standard form. This is also considered a standard form. And I guess really we should call it c squared, just so you don't get it confused. But there's only an x squared and then a constant term. Okay? So in other words, this is a binomial, where these are trinomials. Now normally to factor a binomial, we would just get a common factor. We don't go through that big long process we got before. So, in order to factor this, what we're looking for is a first and a last term that we square root to solve. Okay? So the factored form of this with the letters representing our numbers is going to look like this. Y is equal to, and we'll have two brackets again. And what we'll have is A, X, that's the first term in each. And we'll also have just B as the second term in each, and the difference being that one sign will be positive and one sign will be negative. Okay? So what we're going to do, before we actually find the difference of squares, I'm actually going to reverse a question that looks like this so that you guys get the idea of why it becomes a binomial. Okay? So, what we mean by that, let's start in, and this is again our factored form, right? Let's start in factored form. Y equals 3x plus 2, 3x minus 2. Okay? So we're starting in our factored form, and we're going to do the opposite. We're going to expand that. So it's not really what we're learning today, but the reason we're doing this is so you get an idea of why it becomes a binomial. So we're going to expand this. If you guys remember your rainbow method or FOIL, whatever you want to call it, we got to multiply the 3 by both terms in the other bracket and the positive 2 by both terms in the other bracket. So we're going to left with 3x times 3x will give us 9x squared. 3x times negative 2 gives us 2 times 3x gives us positive 6. And 2 times negative 2 gives us negative 4. Our like terms, when we collect them, what happens? Yeah, they create a 0. They kind of go away. So we've created a binomial. Okay? There are only 2 terms in this. But what's important about these 2 terms is I can find the square root of the first one. What would the square root of 9x squared be? 3x. And what would the square root of 4 be? 2. Okay? The only way we can do this again is if it's a difference of squares, so there has to be a subtraction sign in between them. So now I'm going to factor this. Okay? In other words, we're going to go back to this form. So we've gone from factored to standard by expanding. Okay? And now we're going to go back to factored form from standard to factored by factored. So, what we do is we take a look at this. Can I find the square root of the first term? Yeah, there's a whole number square root. Technically, you can find the square root of almost any term as long as it's positive, but we want whole numbers. So I can find a whole number square root of this. Can I find a whole number square root of the last term? Yes. And is it a subtraction sign in between? Yes. Okay? The only way we can do this is if it's a subtraction sign. If it's a plus sign, we cannot find a difference of squares. Difference meaning subtraction. So, I'll do a little side calculation. The root of 9x squared is what? 3x. Good. And the root of 4 is 2. Perfect. So, we jump right to factor form. 2 brackets. The 3x goes as the first term in each bracket. The 2 is the second term in each bracket. And what do we put as the signs? Positive and 1 negative. Simple as that. Okay? We'll extend this a little farther. We'll even do a more difficult question. Okay? We'll do a more difficult type question here. Let's say, that's example 2, we had 81x squared subtract 36y squared. Can we find the square root of the first term? That's okay. So in our second example, can I find the square root of the first term? What would the square root of 81x squared be? Good. Becomes 9x. Can I find the square root of the second term? What would the square root of 36y squared be? 6y. Perfect. So, and is there a subtraction sign in between?
Yeah.
Perfect. So we can factor this. Call y equals, in brackets, what is the first term in each? 9x. Second term in each? 6y. Okay, so you notice there's an extra variable there. And what sign goes in both? Positive and a negative. That's it. It's factored. It's a very simple process, today's stuff.